Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Force and I'm going to present the 5-card Flickr assessment tool. So if you come to this meta site, 75 digital tools and apps teachers can use to support formative assessment in the classroom, and you scroll down to number 19, you click on 5-card Flickr, you will pull up the 5-card Flickr Stories site. This site is really fascinating because it provides teachers with the opportunity to include in their instruction differentiated instruction. So what I'm going to do is have students create a 5-card Flickr story. They would click on play around and 5-card Flickr. And in here, they can just randomly select pictures to create a story. Say I click on this first picture, then I'll be given more pictures. And then I can click on another picture. And then I get more pictures and click on another one. And you just keep going until you have 5 pictures. The trick of it, though, is that the students have to connect the pictures to the elements, the 5 elements of the story. The exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. So after they create their story, they can post the story in gallery of stories. In gallery of stories, you'll see that there's over 22,000 stories in this website that students can look at. They can look at these stories even before they do their own to get ideas of what they'd want to do. I created a story, in fact, for my students, for them to look at, because I'm probably going to do this, have my students do this assignment soon. So they click on the first story. That's my story, The Process of Life and Death. And they'll be presented with my story, my example of my story. Underneath, I tell my story about this story. Say, when driving to work, yet again, she thinks back to when she did nothing but swing until her feet touched the sky. When at work, she teaches young adults things they haven't yet learned, like what it feels like to mourn someone you love. Then she goes to class to learn about things she hasn't learned yet herself, like how to assess 5-card Flickr. Before bed, she thinks of her sister, the one she holds only in memory now. When it's time to sleep, it's time to mourn. And she knows that someday it too will be time for others, probably her children, to mourn her. Then underneath that is every part of the story, each element. So exposition, it's the juxtaposition between play, swings, and work. Driving the mood is reflective and sad. Then we have the rising action. She is teaching and then learning. Climax, she mourns her sister when she gets ready for sleep. Falling action, when it is time to sleep, it is time to mourn. Thus, even in a time of comfort, the reality of life is hard. In resolution, someday her kids will mourn her death too. So it's a sad resolution. The other interesting thing is that after students look at the stories written by other students, created with the pictures and then written by other students in the class, I will then instruct them to pick someone else's story from the class, and while observing their pictures, create another story with those same pictures. So it would be kind of a way to reflect on another story and observe how pictures can create many different stories. Also in the site, there's show stories. These are the different kinds of stories that students can create. The 5-card Flickr story, again, is just randomly selecting any pictures from over 22,000 pictures. However, if you go to DS-106, this is stories that are created just from 8,435 Flickr photos. And then it gets even shorter, the network narratives, which are narrative stories, stories about students' lives. Here, they're only working with 272 photos. And then the Idea Hive, they'd only be working with 145 Flickr photos, so it could get more challenging over time. Random stories, it's basically the same thing as the play 5-card Flickr. Now, the strength of this site is that by having students create these stories, first of all, when they go into Gallery Stories, after they create their story, they have the option to tweet it. So it's another way to include technology in your instruction. So they can share their story on Twitter, share the tweet, which I did earlier. And as you can see here, you'll see my name, my edited story, because I created the story once already. I have the hashtag 5CardFlickr. And if you click on the link, voila, it brings up my story. So that's one great thing that you can do with this 5Card Flickr. But also, this site provides an excellent way for pre-assessment and formative assessment, a way for teachers to pre-assess what students already know about the elements of a story, and to formative assessment, they can kind of guide them through the elements and the stories that they write and help them to think about the pictures in a new way and just decide whether or not, this kind of activity is going to work. I think that it will. I've done things like this in my classroom, and differentiated instruction always is more successful in students learning than just giving them a simple written assignment. The weakness of this site, however, is that it doesn't actually have a summative assessment tool. So there is nowhere to create a quiz or create a rubric. So instead, I went into Word and created my own rubric. So I have this 5-card Flickr rubric. I have the assignment parts, the 5-card Flickr story, the written story, and then the 5 elements of the story. They can gain a total of 30 points or only 6 points. For the 6 points, pictures are not connecting well. The story's not connecting. Nothing's connecting. Nothing's clear. They don't make connections to the story elements. The next one, pictures loosely connect. There's some connections, but they're still not very clear. And then, of course, with the 30 points, you got the clear connections between the pictures, written story, and story elements. So I mean, this really is just a wonderful tool, especially if you're interested in making sure that your lessons are differentiated. This is just wonderful. It gives students the opportunity to show that they can be great at something. Maybe they're not great writers, but they can think of the story elements with pictures. And then also that will help them to make their way through the story as they're writing. So I hope you enjoyed this. See you in class soon. Thank you.